Secrets Uncovered, Real Lockdown Events at Crestview Academy. It happened on a crisp Wednesday in late October at Crestview Academy, a suburban campus with brick walkways and maple trees losing their leaves. I was in the main lecture hall for a film study seminar, the room smelling faintly of popcorn from the afternoon screening and the mild tang of rain that had started outside. It was the kind of ordinary afternoon where everyone assumed nothing bad would happen, and that ordinary feeling made what followed even sharper. The murmur of students felt like a low engine. Notebooks clicked, and I remember my palms sweating as I flipped a page. A soft cold traveled up my forearms like a warning. Then the public address system cut through the routine with a voice I recognized but that sounded strange over the tinny speaker. Principal Harris said this was not a drill. It was as if someone had cut the air in half. My heartbeat doubled. The room dropped into a soundless pressure, and I promised I would tell everything I saw and heard, because secrets rotted quietly if left unspoken. I will tell who acted, who froze, and how the mechanics of a school designed for safety felt fragile that day. Stay with me through the whole account, because the part people did not see is the part that changed us all. The day began ordinary enough. Professor Turner took attendance in her soft, measured voice while sunlight fell in bars across the stage. Maya sat 2 rows in front of me wearing a red scarf, jaw clenched over a sandwich. Alex tapped his pen on the desk, a nervous rhythm. Coach Ramirez, who had been covering a lecture hour, sat at the back with his hand over a paper cup of coffee. Janitor Leo was in his usual corner near the side door, broom braced against the wall. We joked about the rain. Then the announcement came. The exact words echoed in my head for days. Lockdown. Locked doors. Remain silent. That command had a different timbre than a drill. It carried a tremor. The fluorescent lights flickered and the projector hummed as if resisting power. I felt a metallic scent, like a cathode overheating, and an odd sweetness, like warm plastic. There was a clatter at the far door that made my throat tighten. The professor moved with quick, controlled motion, her fingers trembling as she pulled the curtains closed. She whispered, "Get down, get away from sight." And there was a shuffling of chairs, the scrape of sneakers on linoleum sounding enormous in the sudden quiet. Someone in the row behind me whispered a name, Isabel, and the words seemed to pass like a prayer. Then a sound from the corridor, heavy footsteps and a voice raised too loud to be a student. We were instructed through the speaker to stay put. Every instruction felt both precise and impossibly inadequate. The first incident that triggered the lockdown started as a rumor and hardened into fact within 10 minutes. I heard Coach Ramirez say under his breath, "Somebody's in the West Wing." Alex leaned in close, his breath warm on my ear, and said, "I saw a shadow by the art rooms, thought it was delivery." I remember every tiny sensory detail because they became anchors. The cool of the metal chair under my palms, the slight grit of chalk dust on my fingers, the faint buzz of the speaker, the distant smell of wet leaves brought in on clothes. Then we heard a loud banging sequence on the classroom doors down the hall, followed by the sound of someone yelling. The yelling was flat and full of threat, a voice I could not place. "Open up or I will break it," it said. And the word break made something in me recalibrate. There was breathing that did not belong to our circle. Miss Turner told us to turn off phones and move to the floor, and we obeyed like a flock. Outside, footsteps ran, and that pace was a drumbeat against the building that I followed with my ears only. The janitor, Leo, stood up and tried the security latch twice before returning to us with his eyes wide. "They said it was a student at first," he whispered, "but now police are heading this way." I remember the paper in my hand shaking as I wrote down what I thought was important. The first scene of panic was a conversation compressed into whispers. "Who is that?" I asked. "No one knows," said Maya. "Keep quiet," Coach Ramirez hissed. "Don't move," Miss Turner said. "Call someone," Alex mouthed. "We already did," Leo answered. "Pray," someone else breathed, though none of us were especially religious. If this is real, I thought, then every second counts. That thought hung in the room like a hard stone. The announcement over the PA repeated and added, "Do not evacuate. Police are responding. Lock all doors." Outside, a scooter crashed into a bike rack with a clatter like a fallen instrument, and someone screamed once and then nothing. I promised myself I would remember names later so others would not be reduced to faceless rumors. At roughly the 30-minute mark, the tension moved into what I can only call acute terror and a moment of real danger. I will describe it precisely because the sensory memory is what has haunted me. We were huddled near the stage, breathing shallow and hearing the building's HVAC like a distant ocean. Suddenly, there was a sound unlike the knocks before. A sharp metallic crack, followed by the thud of something heavy hitting the hallway floor. It was like a book dropped from a high shelf, only it had a physical force that made the plaster tremble. The lights above the stage flickered, and the projector screen shivered. The smell that filled the air was acrid, like overheated rubber and something burnt. I felt a vibration under my feet as if a large van had shuttered the foundation. Then the unmistakable sound of glass breaking echoed from the corridor, and a new, terrifying voice shouted a name. A student screamed, and the sound went on for a long, too long moment. The professor's whisper became a sharp bark. "Get down, push into the alcove, hide behind the risers." My knees hit the floor, and my hands found the cool edge of the stage. I remember clinging to the fabric of my jeans because it was something tangible to hold. 6 of us exchanged urgent whispers that set the pattern for the next frantic minutes. "Are you hurt?" "No." "Can you breathe?" "Yes." "Where is the sound coming from?" "Near the west staircase." "Can you see anything?" "No, but I heard boots." "Stay low. If they find us, we play dead. Do not open your mouth." That exchange was quick and breathless, but each short sentence contained a decision about life and helplessness. Then we heard radio noise, faint at first, like a cicada, and a voice crackling through a police channel. It said, "Units inbound, active intruder reported, hold position." The sensation of waiting felt like being underwater. Every sound was muffled and huge. That moment, those sharp noises and the smell and the vibration stayed with me as a kind of fixed image that returned in the dark later. The immediate resolution was partial and confusing. After about an hour, we heard the shouts go from threats to commands. Police by then had sealed exits, and Officer Daniels, whom some students recognized from the local community patrol, came through the rear hallway. He was breathing hard and his uniform was smeared with mud. He spoke in short sentences to Miss Turner and to Principal Harris, who had arrived looking pale. There were rumors that someone had been injured, but no confirmation. In the corridor, the muffled sounds of officers moving with flashlights painted pale circles on the wall. The smell of coffee from an overturned cup drifted in from a staff room where someone had dropped it during the alarm. Names began to attach to actions. Officer Daniels said he had seen a figure loitering near the east entry and pursued briefly before backup arrived. "We moved him toward the gym," he said. "We had to take him down." Coach Ramirez explained he had directed students away from the atelier and wheel storage shed and had helped barricade the art room. Janitor Leo described checking locks and that the west wing door had been forced slightly. Principal Harris fielded calls, speaking to the district security office. Councilwoman Beatrice mentioned later in a meeting. I remember Alex texting his sister and repeating, "They say someone is in custody." With those words, relief and suspicion mixed. Later that day, news vans parked near the main gate and a city cruiser blocked the entrance, small flags of blue and white flashing. We were told to wait for parent pick-up and to use the counseling resources the school provided. The institutional response was steady but imperfect. There were contradictions in statements and a rumor mill that spun faster than verification. That morning, the school sent out a statement by email that evening stating a suspect had been detained and that an investigation was ongoing. In private, some teachers were furious at what they saw as inadequate communication. Others were shaken and silent. I could see Coach Ramirez rubbing his jaw as if to check that he still had a face. Some hours and then a week after the lockdown, a second incident unfolded and it showed a different kind of vulnerability. It involved a package left near the old auditorium, a mechanical noise, and a smell like stale battery acid. It turned out not to be an explosive device, but the scare it produced forced the administration to confront deeper policy gaps. The backstory that explains why I was at Crestview, why I knew these hallways so well, and why I felt compelled to speak up is important to understand my perspective. I grew up in a household where my father taught me to catalog things carefully. As a child, I collected small, broken watches and fixed them with patience he taught me. I left home to study communications and then returned to work part-time at the campus AV office because I liked the humming servers and the ordered rows of cables in the server room. My father had been a volunteer trustee at a community school, so I always felt some responsibility toward institutions where young people learned. For years, I trusted the routines of Crestview. I had also seen small warning signs that made me quietly uneasy. The West Wing doors were older, some locks creaked, and the outdoor lights were unreliable in storms. That background is not an excuse or evidence it could have been prevented, but it made the later choices to speak up feel like obligation rather than heroics. I am telling this because when institutions face gaps, individual memories and small actions can matter. For me, that meant I had names to attach to details I observed and that I could talk to investigators about sequences of sound and light and timing. The second incident, the package scare, revealed how rumor and procedure collide. It happened during morning assembly the following week when a custodian found an unmarked bag. There was a rapid exchange of voices and decisions. "Do not touch it," Leo said. "Call Central," Miss Turner added. Officer Daniels instructed staff to cordon the area and to wait for the bomb squad. Principal Harris called the district on the landline, and I heard him say, "We secured the perimeter." In our assembly, we were told to move to the auditorium and to remain calm. The smell of battery acid intensified as authorities approached, and technicians in protective gear entered like two slow statues. There was a long silence while they checked timers and wires. I remember the click of a radio, the whisper of a technician, and the low murmur of students who tried to look brave but could not hide their shaking hands. Later, it was a false alarm, a homemade device without detonators. But the psychological impact lasted longer than the technical risk. The board convened a meeting with parents, including Councilwoman Beatrice, Safety Coordinator Officer Daniels, Principal Harris, Coach Ramirez, Ms. Turner, Janitor Leo, and a district risk officer named Elena. They debated procedures, pointed to unclear signage, and promised improvements. In that meeting, the names mattered. Each person I mentioned had held the line in different ways, and their actions had ripple effects on policy. The council decided to upgrade locks, run more realistic lockdown drills, and to fund a nighttime lighting overhaul. They also promised more transparent communication with parents and to hire a full-time security coordinator. Those were concrete outcomes that followed from a scary but contained incident. There were two extended moments of tension that stayed with me and deserve precise recording. The first long tension sequence happened when the initial intruder was in the West Wing and officers were still clearing rooms. We were curled on the floor, and the hallway noise changed from the heavy thump of feet to a more clinical sound, like someone testing metal doors with a baton. I could hear the rustle of equipment, a cough, an officer saying, "Clear left, clear right." For nearly 10 minutes, time dilated. Our breaths were our loudest sounds. Then came a high-pitched keening, and someone sobbed into a sleeve. We held hands without thinking and counted heartbeats to maintain sanity. That keening became a chorus of small noises, the click of a radio, the rustle of jackets, a soft "Are you okay?" and the faint scuff of a shoe. When finally Officer Daniels and a squad turned the corner, relief rolled through the room like a physical thing, and then guilt followed, because we had been safe while someone else had been hurt. The second long tension sequence occurred during the package scare, with technicians kneeling around the object and lights trained like needles. The technicians used a robotic arm that moved with a slow mechanical whine, and each movement produced a fresh worry inside us. Every tick of the arm sounded like a heartbeat in a quiet room. The two sequences were different in cause but identical in effect. Time stretched, senses narrowed, and ordinary gestures became monumental. Each sequence taught me how attention focuses in crisis and how minor sensations, like smell or vibration, can become signposts of survival. Afterwards, the community response was a patchwork of practical steps and human consolation. There were meetings chaired by Principal Harris, with Officer Daniels present, and Councilwoman Beatrice advocating for mental health funding. The Student Council, represented by Maya and Alex, organized peer support groups, and Bakewell Middle School donated care packages. Coach Ramirez ran extra supervision. On campus, and Janitor Leo was publicly thanked in the newsletter for his quick actions. The district instituted a clearer hotline number and updated the lockdown protocol to specify 4 redundancies for communication. Students were offered counseling, and consulting psychologists visited for weeks. Some things changed quickly, like locks and light bulbs. Other changes were slower. Trust, for instance, took months to rebuild for some of us. I learned that policies can be improved and that people who act with care matter as much as formal security measures. If you are watching and you have experienced something similar, please share your experience in the comments. Start your reply with, "I was in class when," and give a brief sentence about what helped you cope. We want to create a space where experiences can be shared and where small lessons can help others. Your words can guide administrators and help other survivors feel less alone. After you comment, I will come back to the story and explain what procedures I think worked and what they missed. 3 months later, we had a community forum where victims, parents, staff, and police sat together. The tone was raw but productive. Names like Principal Harris, Officer Daniels, Coach Ramirez, Miss Turner, Janitor Leo, Alex, Maya, and Councilwoman Beatrice recurred in testimonies. People recounted specific sensory memories to help investigators build timelines. The school started an anonymous reporting line for suspicious activity and required monthly walkthroughs by the security team. There were also long-term effects. Some teachers requested transfers, some families still avoid on-campus events at night, and a small number of students developed anxiety that needed ongoing therapy. The incident prompted a deeper conversation about transparency and resource allocation. It revealed that while drills are necessary, the human response during a real event is messy and unpredictable and must be planned for with empathy. I ended up volunteering with a peer support group, and with the AV office, I helped install additional cameras and improved the server logging to create better after-action records. Those technical steps felt like repair. In closing, I want to say what this experience left me with. Months later, I still hear echoes in the corridors when it rains. Some nights my palms tingle exactly like they did the first day. But there were positive outcomes too. The school learned to communicate faster, the district funded mental health support, and many of us found new ways to hold each other. I discovered that telling the story matters because the details teach lessons about what to fix and who to thank. If you believe stories like this should be heard and analyzed with respect, consider subscribing and turning on notifications so similar accounts get a platform. That helps us maintain a space that investigates and supports without exploiting pain. The final image I want to leave you with is simple and stubborn. Safety is not only locks and cameras, it is the small acts of people who decide to stay and help. If this story moved you, share it, comment, and if you were there and want to correct any detail I said, please do. Your corrections make the record truer. Suggested chapters and timestamps for the video version: 00, Secrets Uncovered, Opening and Hook; 110, Context and Routine at Crestview; 40, The First Lockdown Trigger; 8:30, Acute Threat and Police Response; 12:45, Package Scare and Secondary Incident; 16:30, Backstory and Named Actors; 19:0, Institutional Response and Changes; 22:30, Reflections and Call to Action. Suggested description for the upload: a first-hand account of 2 lockdown events at Crestview Academy told in first person. In this video, I described the initial intrusion that led to a lockdown, the package scare the following week, and the community response that followed. I name staff and students involved and explain procedural lessons learned. If you or someone you know needs support, contact local mental health services. Chapters included: links Officer Daniel's liaison number, placeholder. Councilwoman Beatrice office, placeholder. Local prices hotline, placeholder. Thumbnail suggestion: close-up of narrator looking tense with a blurred corridor behind and a silhouetted figure in the distance. Text overlay, short and bold, Secrets Uncovered, Crestview Academy. Color palette, dark blue, muted red, yellow accents. B-roll ideas, empty corridors with wet leaves on walkways. Close-ups of hands gripping chair edges. Office doors locking. Administrative bulletin board, staged assembly with students in silhouettes. Shots of police vehicles arriving. Server room humming and AV cables. Street and campus gate visuals. SFX and music cues. Low-tension ambient pad under narration. Rise in strings during acute moments. Careful use of footsteps, ricocheted sounds, and radio crackle for authenticity. End screen suggestions. Link to playlist on school safety. Link to a companion video with interviews and a subscribe button. Thank you for listening to this careful account and for respecting the people involved.